Are you an adventurer looking to take your hunt to the next level? Then you're in the right place. Welcome to East Meets West Hunt with your host, Beau Martonik.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the East Meets West Hunt podcast presented by Spartan Forge. On today's episode, I am joined by hunting guide and Montana resident Brandon Purcell. Brandon lives a life that most of us dream of by being able to go on hunts throughout the spring and fall. We discuss what it's like being a guide, whether you should go guided or DIY, advice for people coming out west, what it was like for him spending the fall in Alaska, spring bear hunting, and a few good stories mixed in. On this week's Mountain Buck Monday Story of the Week, this one comes from Jacob Gosnell. And Jacob said, "My name is Jake Gosnell, and I have taken 2 great mountain bucks this year. I got turned on to your podcast earlier this year. I really appreciate the advice that you and your guests share on hunting eastern woods mountain bucks. Here's the story, and hopefully you like it. I got invited to my buddy's bow camp in Maryland this year, 2021, in November. I got up there and only had 3 days to hunt. The first day I scouted the property the whole day. I found a nice ridge covered with rubs and 2 scrapes. I sat there all day in my saddle on the second day and never saw a deer. Luckily, the next morning my luck changed. I saw 3 does and 2 spike bucks by 9 a.m. At 10:30 that morning, a big, beautiful 6-point buck came in at 5 yards. I hardly had time to think about it. I just drew and put the pin where it needed to be. He ran about 15 yards and piled up. 2 days later was the West Virginia rifle opener. I've been hunting a piece of public during the bow season all year this year and had a few close encounters. I just couldn't seal the deal. I was running late and then decided to go on my bow spot on a 4-year-old clear cut instead of where I was planning on rifle hunting. I got set up and am still at around 6:30 a.m. At 7:15, I saw a silhouette of a deer off to my right, my weak side in the saddle, at about 80 yards. I grabbed my grandfather's old Weatherby rifle and looked through the scope. He was a shooter. I waited for what felt like 10 years, but was probably only 2 minutes, and squeezed the trigger. He didn't take another step." Well, I have to say that's a pretty awesome season there, Jake, and what an incredible, opportunity to be able to take 2 bucks within a week and be able to do that in both Maryland and West Virginia. 2 beautiful bucks. I have them over on the East Meets West Hunt Instagram and East Meets West Outdoors Facebook page. Check those out. If you want to share your story, send it in to my email, beau@eastmeetswesthunt.com, or just go to the website and fill in the contact us form there. And I'd love to share the stories. I got a pile of them still rolling in. As you see, I'm still going through 2021 submissions. So getting through them. I love sharing these stories. So thank you guys for sending them in. I did want to give an update for everybody here. So Montana hunting applications are due April 1st. I'm really trying to hunt Montana this year. So just letting you know, I got my application in already. And so if you're going to be doing that, get that submitted here shortly. And New Mexico is March 16th. So depending on when you're listening to this, it's either tomorrow or could have passed. But get in there. So Montana, they changed a lot of things with their draw system this year, changed units up, things like that. So be sure to do your research prior to applying. There's a lot of changes that are going on there. You can even find that out if you log into, if you have Eastman's Tag Hub. Go Hunt has some information on that. Hunt and Fool, they just did a great podcast. Their podcast is Built to Hunt. They had a good podcast going through all of that. I'll just leave it for you to check that out there instead of me giving my best version of it on here right now. So go check those out and before you apply. And then New Mexico is cool. New Mexico, you have great elk hunting opportunities throughout the state and other species, but they go on a no point system. So you just apply it. It's a random draw every year. So you have a chance. It's just that they do take a little bit of your money if you're going to be applying there. So be sure to read into the details. But I always shoot for the fence in New Mexico. I have not put in yet. I need to do that. But be putting in for the best units that I possibly can, and just hoping that I'm really banking on Montana this year personally. So with that being said, I really hope that you enjoy this episode with Brandon. I talk a lot about do-it-yourself hunting on this podcast, and I think the guided routes, might be right for some other people. And I think there's just a lot of value that can be had in this episode. And Brandon is just such a awesome dude and just fun to talk to. I think you really enjoy this episode. So if you wouldn't mind, if you're listening to this podcast on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, wherever, give it a review, rating, whatever. I really appreciate that. Helps. Tell your friends, share it on social media, tag me in it. That stuff helps out so much. As you heard, even just in this Mountain Buck Monday story from Jake, word of mouth is still the best way of this getting out. And I truly, truly appreciate all of the support. So with that being said, enjoy this episode, and I hope everyone has a great rest of your week. All right, we're live. Brandon Purcell, welcome to the podcast, man.
Thanks for having me on, man.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'd first kind of come across you when I put a DVD in my DVD player there. I don't know how many years ago The Outlier came out, the Montana Wild film. Yeah. It was funny because I remember watching it. I was like, man, this is awesome. And one of the things that was like had me pumped to like going out west and doing stuff. And I want to say it was like 2015 or something, wasn't it? Was it that long ago?
It was, I don't even know. It felt like
Yeah. But I remember seeing that and you, and then, years later we started chatting on Instagram and everything. I've been following along of your kind of wild lifestyle. So it's pretty cool to get to chat with you.
For sure.
So you live in Montana, is that correct?
Yep.
Yeah. And, I don't know, from the outside looking in, it looks like you live a pretty sweet life. So do you want to give a little bit of a background on yourself and what you do?
Yeah, I've been professionally guiding for like the last decade, roughly. I've kind of guided throughout the West from Montana, Colorado, New Mexico, Sonora, and then I just recently started guiding in Alaska. Just kind of have a thirst for adventure, and just Alaska's kind of the next step.
Yeah. Yeah, that's next level for sure. Like I think I remember seeing like you were out there for like 4 months this past year.
I was like 2 months.
Okay, 2 months.
Yeah, it felt like a lifetime.
I could imagine. So what were you guiding for up there?
We did sheep, moose, and elk when I was there.
Dang.
It was pretty sweet. We were in the field for like 18 days on the sheep hunt, which was like, or we did 2 sheep hunts, but it was like, it felt like an eternity. It was like, so like I've never been on a hunt for 18 days, like that's a grind.
And it's not like you're like coming back to like some nice amenities if I'm not mistaken. You dropped off, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. We were just dropped off on the strip, and it was like, we were there for 18 days. Like we were hiking around and hunting, but it was like that was a fucking long haul.
Yeah.
The end of it was like, we were just sitting there like, get me out of here,
Yeah. I was gonna be like, how do you just mentally like getting through that sometimes?
Oh man, just trying to be patient, a lot of smokes,
Yeah.
Try to keep yourself sane. Like after the first one, like Jeremy dropped off some beer and it was just like the greatest thing ever. It was like, oh dude, we're 150 miles from Anchorage and we just got beer. Like this is great. Good feeling,
Yeah, I bet that'd be nuts. Like, because like I said, it's not even like, hunting that long anywhere is a long time, but when you're just like dropped off in the middle of the wilderness, and like hunting hard every day, I'd imagine.
For sure. And there was a couple down days, but it was still like, you're just in it. It's pretty raw, it's like, hunting in Montana is great and I love it, but it definitely feels like you're way less just like committed to it here. like you can walk out here, you know,
you
no matter
can get
what.
out basically anywhere within a day, you know, to come back out.
Yeah. And up there, it's like full committed. It's like you could potentially walk out of there if you had to, but it would take, I mean, we're 150 miles from town. It was like, woof.
Yeah. Who do you, so who do you guide for up there?
Who?
Yeah. Who?
I guide for Jeremy Rusink with Rogue Expeditions.
Oh, okay. I gotcha.
Yeah,
and
sure.
that's cool. I was just curious, and so like with that variety of the hunts, like were you ever on like a sheep hunt or anything before you started going and doing that, or is this something like that you've, I guess, been doing a little bit for a while up there?
I was on 2 sheep hunts before that. I killed a big horn, and then here in Montana 12 years ago.
Oh, geez.
And then I guided a desert in Sonora like 4 or 5 years ago. So that was actually my 3rd sheep species, like hunted or guided, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty sick. And so how did you get into guiding? Like, I know you said you've been doing it for about 10 years now, but like what led you down that path? Like, how does somebody like become a guide?
I don't really, to be honest, it's like, I think I like hunting. I love hunting. And then I like took a few friends out elk hunting one time. I was like, man, this is really cool. It'd be pretty cool to do for a job, you know? And then I replied to a Craigslist posting back in the day of like looking for hunting guides in Southern Colorado. And I totally crooked dude, but it like got my foot in the door, you know, into like guiding and got me some experience. And then just from there, it's just been like, you know, keeping the ball rolling.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's like, it's like something that everyone thinks of as like a dream. Like, oh man, I'd love to hunt every day and be able to do that and guide and stuff. And I actually have a couple buddies of mine from Western Pennsylvania that had that guide in Montana now, and they've been doing it. They went to college with me and stuff, and they got out and they were working a job, and they were just like, fuck it, and hiked the Appalachian Trail, and then went out to Montana and started guiding. And I was like, that's awesome.
I mean, there's definitely like pros and cons. Like you get a lot of time in the field, but there's also like you're spending a lot of days in the field. You know, it's like, I mean, I think one year it was like I started out and I guided like all of September, all of October, and all of November. I literally like had like 10 to 15 days off maybe in a 3-month period. And it was just, I was fucking worked at the end of it. You know, I was like burnt big time.
Yeah. I was going to say I was going to go back on, you know, kind of what I said is like, everybody looks at it as a dream, and I'm sure there is some super good days, but it's also not like all just flowers and big bucks everywhere.
No, there's a lot of days where it's just grind. It's like the days you kill stuff, you're like, this is epic. And then the days, there's other days where it's like you'll go a week without seeing anything, you know, and you're just like, huh. And then it gets tough because those guys are paying for it. And, you know, there's a certain level of like expectations. And it's like hunting's hunting, but at the same time, like you can't really suck at it. Otherwise, it's like hard to keep a job, you know, or keep employed.
Yeah.
There's pressure for sure.
And so when in Montana, like, do you have your own outfit now, or do you still work for somebody? How does that work for you?
I contract through a local outfitter here, just kind of offer the hunts that I want to offer, you know? And it's like, so I'm doing spring bear and rifle elk here. And that way I can still do my Alaska stuff, and people pick and choose what I want to do here. So they're just getting like thrown into it and being like, here's your client. You know, it's like I can do the hunts that I want to do now, which is nice.
Oh yeah, that's pretty sweet. I'm sure that came from, you know, years of, you know, building up kind of a reputation and building up a clientele to be able to do that. Otherwise it's just, yeah, that's sweet though, that you get to kind of choose and do that. And did I see that, that you're doing some of that work with latitudes?
Yep.
Okay. Are they so their eastern side, like their whitetail stuff, I know Owen that's over there, and I've hunted with those guys before. Yeah. Good people.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, Robert, who owns Latitude, is a super cool dude, and he just kind of linked up and just kind of talked about like what I could do here, and it's just like made sense, you know?
Yeah.
So it'd be nice to offer some sweet hunts, you know, and not have to just be like the general guide, you know, kind of just running the own show kind of thing.
Yeah. So I have a question for you, and this is one of the things that I really wanted to talk to you about is like on my podcast and everything, I do a lot of talking about like how for people to go out west and plan these types of things and do everything. But I haven't really had many actual guides on here to like talk about the other aspect of it. Like, and it took me doing it a bunch to realize like, all right, you know, if people are looking for an experience out west and want to shorten that learning curve and have a little bit extra money to spend, it's a lot smarter to go out and do it guided and learn from that aspect. And I kind of want to hear your opinion on that. Just give your opinion.
I mean, yeah, you can look at it a couple different ways. Like you go out west and you start busting your balls and you want to like earn it. That's awesome. But you're going to be looking at like a few years of like a pretty expensive camping trip. You know, I mean, that's honest, not like sugarcoating it. It's like that's, unless you're like happen to get lucky, which happens, you know, but it's like most guys are going to take them, especially if you start trying to do like archery hunting on your own, you're in for like a big surprise. Like it's not sunshine and rainbows, you know, there's a lot of dark days out there where it's just like beating your head into the wall. But if you think about it, I mean, you think about like all those trips, you know, I don't know how much you're spending per trip coming out west, but I imagine it's probably in like $1,500 to $2,000 for the whole trip, you know, maybe a little more. So if you're not successful for like 3 years, like that's essentially the same cost as going on a guided hunt where you're going to stand a greater chance than not of actually like killing something or like having like an experience of getting close to killing something. Cause it's like, you know, there's a lot that goes into it and guys miss and shit happens, but it's like, you know, I would say more often than not, you're going to have better opportunity to at least like kill something or see how to kill something with a guide rather than like going on your own and trying to figure it out. And I'm not saying like there's anything wrong with, I mean, I do all my hunts on my own too, which is great, you know, for sure. If you're just getting into it, that's fucking daunting.
Yeah.
It'd be like, oh, I'm going to head out west and I'm going to go elk hunting. It's like, dude,
yeah,
there's like, you know, there's like a lifestyle being sold out there and like people definitely buy into it for sure. And, you know, I have mad respect for people who want to do it themselves, but you know, you can definitely sharpen the learning curve a lot by just going on like a guided hunt or two. And then you might decide, hey, I really like doing this. You know, it's like, I'm going to go with a guide until I have enough experience to like be able to be like, I can go for myself, you know?
Yeah, it's really funny because, you know, I definitely like drank that Kool-Aid like when I first started doing it, and I was like, man, I gotta go. I'm gonna go DIY. I talked about this before. Like I go DIY. I'm gonna go backcountry and backpack. I'm like all the key terms that you need, OTC. Like I'm throwing all that everything in there, and I gotta do that, and I gotta go as far as possible, as steep as possible. And it was a freaking eye opener. Like I was like, I got my ass kicked. It took me a while to find any sort of success in it, and I don't say like looking back, I wouldn't change it now, but like, if you're like getting into it and, you know, like I've had other people, you know, recommend maybe, you know, starting with antelope or starting with something else, or if you're like, I'm dead set, I want to kill an elk, maybe looking at like the guided route is maybe your option. And,
for sure.
And, you know, I'd like to hear your thoughts on this, but like being an active participant, just because you go guide doesn't mean like these animals just come out and come, you know, running into you here, you know.
I mean, you're still working for it, you know. I mean, it's not like it never comes easy. You just definitely have the advantage of like having somebody that's like at least should know what they're doing. You know, that's not every guide knows what they're doing. Like, let's just put that out there. You gotta like, if you get a bad guide, that sucks. But I think guys that like, you know, go out of state and have these expectations, like, oh, I'm gonna go out there and I want to kill like a 300 bull, and it's like, yeah, if you're new to it, like, dude, there's no shame in like coming out west and like starting out with like a cow elk rifle hunt, because at least you'll get some experience. You'll like kill something, you know, you'll see stuff and you'll probably go kill something, or you'll like fail, but at least you like won't spend a week or 10 days like blundering around in like the archery elk scene of like trying to get close and trying to like figure out like what these animals are doing. It's like,
Yeah.
you go rifle elk hunt them in November, and it's like, dude, those cows are all out in the open. You get some stalks in, you kind of learn about elk. Not a bad way. If you're like trying to go DIY and like want to be successful, like that's not a bad option, you know?
No, definitely. And also just learning how to like cut up an elk and do those different things. Cause like for the most part, like when it comes to guys coming from the East, unless you're cutting them up and packing them out, which is a very few, a small group of people that are doing that. Most people are, you're gutting them and you're dragging them out like that. Doesn't work as well, on a big animal.
No, I mean, if you're on a private ranch, dude, gutting them out is great, but it's like, that's not how I've never gotten an elk without grant,
Yeah.
It just doesn't happen. I mean, unless you have like a horse and like a rope and some deep snow, you can like drag them out of there, but it's like, it's good to learn before you're just like balls deep and like, 7-8 miles back there and you're like, I got to break this elk down.
Yeah. I'd be interested to hear, do you have any like good like horror stories of like clients that you've had? And obviously no names, or you don't have to say anything like that, but like any stories of like, okay, this is what you should not do if you're
I mean, I've had some clients that I just wish that I would have never had, just like people you don't get along with. Most guys are pretty good. I mean, I remember having one guy on a rifle elk, and it was actually the first one I'd guided in Montana. And we like shot like a 7x7 bull first morning of his hunt. And the guy was like so cold. He was like, I'm a desert hunter. I would have never made it 7 days. And he's just like sitting there and shivering the whole time. And then like, he was kind of a pretty boy and like didn't want to pack anything. So it was like, he was like, and we're like, 3 miles in there or whatever. And he's like, I don't want to get my backpack bloody for the plane ride. And I was like, dude, what are you doing here?
Yeah.
You get like, in my world, it's like you get 95% of the people you get are great, fantastic people. And there's 5% that you're just like, this sucks,
Yeah. And then you got to spend all that time with them like every day.
Yeah. So if like a client sucks, it sucks.
Well, I always joke like, I found like some good hunting partners I like to hunt with, and I like to go on a Western hunt with someone that I don't know. It's going to take a lot of convincing for me to even try. Like that person could be great, but I just don't want to have a bad experience because that could ruin the entire thing.
For sure. Yeah. Choose your hunting partners wisely for sure. I've seen it from a guiding perspective. If guys will show up on a 2-on-1 and like, they're not matched physically. And so it's like one guy will be able to send it and the other guy's like dragging ass behind you. And it's like, that's a huge one. You want to be mentally compatible. You definitely want to make sure like you and your buddy, if you're going out west or whatever, going out of state, you want to make sure you guys are like pretty neck and neck physically. Cause that can totally break you,
Yeah. Oh, that's definitely. And so like what are your thoughts on like drop camps?
I mean, if you don't have the budget, if you don't have like your own gear, it's like not a bad option. If you have all your own stuff, it's kind of seems like a waste of money, unless you had somebody that was literally just going to like negotiate with you to like just literally take you in on horseback and drop you off. Because most of those drop camps, I mean, it's still like, a third to half the price of the guided hunt. It's really like unless you don't have any of that stuff, if you don't have any of the camping gear,
yeah,
that might make sense. But if you have like any of the backpacking stuff or whatever, the one thing I will say is like, if you try to like go send it and kill an elk super far, it would be nice to have like the option of being like, hey, come pick this thing up, because elk are heavy.
Yeah, which I guess at that point too, it's like it's important to. I know like whenever I go, no matter where I go, if I'm backpacking, I always like call a packer ahead of time. Sure. I've never used one yet, but like just to have that contact, have it in my inReach to like in case you get yourself in a bad situation to be able to come help you out.
Yeah, and I think a lot of outfitters, if they're not like super super busy or like not. I mean, I've run into guys in Colorado hunting before that they've like offered like, oh, if you kill anything, just give me a call. And you're like, oh, like meeting people in the like outfitters in the field, and you're like, oh,
really?
Cool. For sure. That's not every time because sometimes people are dicks, but that particular time, the guy was totally like cool. He's like, yeah, if you kill something, just call me, man. I'll pack it out. And I was like, I like that.
Yeah. I've only had one bad experience like with running into an outfitter in the field, and it was in Colorado. I remember I was backpacking and they were coming up with horses coming up the trail, and they were just like assholes to me about like where are you going? I'm like, oh, just up over that ridge. And like, oh, well, that's where we got to camp. I'm like, okay, well, I'll head over this way. And like, well, we got to camp over there. I'm like, all right.
Yeah.
I see how this is going.
And definitely some guys are dicks about it. They act like they like own the mountain, and it's kind of just like, dude, come on, man.
Yeah.
It's everybody's mountain.
Do most of most of your hunts, are they like your guided hunts and stuff? Are they on public land? They on private land? Kind of a mixture.
I've guided on a lot of both. The stuff that I'm doing now is all public land. The private land stuff is like, I mean, no bullshit. It's pretty nice, but there is like drawbacks too. Cause it's like a lot of times you can only hunt your private. So if like you have 3,000 acres, and you better not run the animals out of there. Or you better take advantage of it. Like when they're there, you better try to kill one or like be smart about it and keep them there. There's pluses and minuses to both, for sure.
Yeah. Cause what, like a lot of times on those private lands, you have like the landowner tags, right? So like is that why you're saying you can only be on like that private land?
And like permitting too, like not everybody has Forest Service permits, like use permits.
Okay.
You can't just like be like, I'm an outfitter, I'm gonna operate on the X national forest. It's like you have to have permits. Whereas like guiding on private land is a little bit easier because you don't have to have that. But it has drawbacks too. Because you have this awesome place to hunt, it's generally pretty less pressured. But if they're not there, they're not there, and they're not going to be there.
Yeah. So how do you recommend like somebody to, if they're looking for an outfit or do anything, like how do you vet those type of people? Like how do you figure that out?
I mean, I just kind of like definitely be specific on like what kind of hunt you're looking for, like if you're looking for like an experience of like a public land, like backcountry hunt, like, try to like filter through like, who looks good, who has good success, and especially who has success like recently. Cause there's a lot of outfitters out there that like, have areas that were good 10, 15 years ago, but in the last 10, 15 years, like they haven't killed much. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Definitely like looking at pictures and like, just kind of feeling people out. Like, I feel like you kind of get a feeling about people when you talk to them, even if it's just on the phone. And like, the dude sounds like he's blowing like smoke up your ass. Like he probably is.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of,
I know like when I was just at the Great American Outdoor Show in Harrisburg here recently, and there's like hundreds of outfitters there. And it's like, man, that's like an overwhelming thing, like to go in and be like, where do I go? What makes sense? That sort of deal.
For sure. Yeah. And I mean, like the bottom line too, is like, you want to probably book with somebody that you like get along with. Cause there's definitely like conflicts of personality that I've seen for sure, and like, you want to make sure that the person you're going with is like kind of aligned with your values, and like whatever your values are is fine. I don't care, but like, don't go book a hunt with somebody who like, you don't feel like shares your same values. Cause you're probably not going to get along, like, and that sucks. I've seen it happen firsthand, and you're just like, this is a fucking nightmare,
I can imagine.
For sure.
I've went on 2 outfitted hunts in my life. One I did, actually both of them were through, working with Sika on product testing. They're both whitetail hunts though, so I've never done any of the Western stuff, but I've had both. Those were both like super positive experiences, and like,
for sure,
was just a blast. And that's why like I feel like with me doing the podcast and doing these things, like I need to do better at like showing both sides, just because like I've personally like done a lot of the stuff on my own, like showing that there is like, and the community and the outfitters and the guides and stuff, like that's when you are paying money, like that's just helping this whole entire community and helping everything, and having just better odds of success depending on what your goals are and everything there. But I just like I've heard other people too, like when they've gone and not killed, say with an outfitter, and be like, oh man, like they didn't put me on this or they didn't do that, and I'm like, that's it doesn't guarantee anything. Like, especially like you're guiding on, I guess whether if it's public or private, it doesn't matter. There's still they're animals. Like, it's hard to do that,
For sure.
and being an active participant in learning. Like, if I were to hunt with you, like, I would try to be like learning everything I possibly could, like, as I'm going along and being able to do that, because you obviously have more experience and knowledge and doing all those types of things. And I feel like a lot of times, especially guys, I'll say guys for sure, and I would love to hear your input, but we have like these egos, like naturally of like, like you're good. Like, I knew when I worked at an archery shop, I hated when I do coaching lessons or like anything with adult males, because like even if they like signed up for a lesson, they were going to tell me how to do it. I'm like, all right, yeah.
Oh yeah. For sure. And like, yeah. I don't know. I always try to tell people, like, going into anything, doing anything in life, generally, it's like, dude, expectations need to like be level with reality, and where you run into issues, especially on like guys going on guided hunts, they think, I'm paying all this money, I should be guaranteed an opportunity. And like, that is not how it is. Like, unless you're going and hunting a high fence ranch, which, I mean, whatever, if that's your cup of tea, go do it. I don't care. But if you do anything else, like, you have to know that there's like some probability that you're not going to kill anything, and it's like, that sucks, but you just need to be like in tune with that. And you need to kind of like, especially like going into a hunt, whether it's guided or unguided, you need to like have a decent expectation of like what you're in for. Cause like a public land hunt, your odds of success, unless you really know what you're doing, are probably a lot lower than if you were to do like a private land guided hunt. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. And what's funny is like, if you look like when you're researching states and units and all this stuff, and you're looking at it and you see this like success rate, and you look at it and say it's like, all right, 10% in this unit for elk and stuff. And I always look at it like, okay, is there a lot of outfitters operating that? Because they're probably above that rate. So everyone is doing on their own is going to be typically less. So it's like one of those things, like if I'm like, especially areas that have like wildernesses and stuff, I'm like, all right, there's probably some outfitters that are operating out of these areas and can increase that a little bit falsely if you're trying to do it by yourself.
For sure. Yeah, definitely like swings the pendulum a little bit more on the success side when you have outfitters operating in there. Because like you can't view anybody else in the woods as competition. The only person that you're competing with is inside, in between your own two ears. You know what I mean? And there is no fucking way that you can try to compete. If you're a guy that's coming out for a week, you are not going to have the same intel that a guy that has been in there for 6 weeks is going to have. You know what I mean? And that's just brass tacks. I mean, there's no way. Because when you're guiding, you're in there every day. You know what's going on. It's like, and then you have this network of other guides that have seen what's going on, and you all kind of know, like, okay, this is what's going on in this area. But you show up as like a DIY guy, and it's just like, you have no idea. You have none of that intel. And it's like, you're just trying to show up, and like, you can't act like those people are competition, because they're not. It's just like, you're competing with yourself at the end of the day. And it's like, dude, harness that expectation and just, you know what I mean? Because then you're able to enjoy yourself more. Because if you see like an outfitter camp and they're packing out bulls, it's just like, you're going to get pissed. But you got to realize, like, they've been in there all season, and preseason.
Yeah, no, I can definitely agree with that. So like, another thing that I was thinking about is like, with being a guide, how much time do you get to hunt for yourself? And is that like an issue?
You just have to like be able and willing to carve out time to hunt for yourself. You can't say yes all the time, because it's really easy to like be like, okay, I have to guide every single day of the season. Otherwise, like, I'm broke right now, because it's like February, December through April is like the slow season, so it's like, but you got to kind of like, I definitely fell into the trap a couple of years of being like, I'm guiding every week. And then you get to the end of the year and you're like, I got to hunt like 4 or 5 days, which sucks. So you got to prioritize it in your own life. And that's hard to do, because it's like, you want to make money, but it's like, knocking down here for yourself is like pretty infuriating,
Yeah. You seem to still get on some pretty big ass bulls on your own for guiding as much as you do.
For sure. I mean, it's part of it's just kind of like knowing what's going on, It's like I don't know. I'm not trying to toot my own horn, but I feel like I like have the elk thing like fairly well figured out. That's not.
Well, you spend so much time. Like, I mean, yeah, you're not. I don't think you're being egotistical at that stand. I mean, you literally you do it for a living. So like you've been able to figure it out.
And it's nice being able to hunt on your own because I'm not like confined to the guide use area. So it's like I don't have to hunt like I generally never hunt where I'm guiding, just because it's like, you don't want to be competition, and then it's like you don't want to shoot out what you're trying to take with clients, and it's like I'll just go to another area of the state, and we have that opportunity here with the general tag to be like, I'm gonna go hunt that corner of the state,
Yeah. And do you like, so what's your preference when you're hunting by yourself? Do you like hunting from, hunting from the roads? Do you like backpacking in? Do you like going by yourself? Do you like going with people? Like, what's your like preference with that?
I like hunting by myself, and I like doing day hunts. I do enjoy backpack hunting. But part of the thing with backpack hunting is unless you know for a fact that where you're going is like dynamite, it can feel like a bad marriage. You're just like, you're stuck. And you are not getting out of it. It's like you're going to burn a whole day getting out of there. And it's like, so you get trapped into like, oh, I'm going to stay and I'm going to like ride this out. It's like, that's not always like the biggest bulls are not necessarily in the deepest, darkest canyon far away from the roads. And that's just honest, it's like there are times with those bigger bulls will find like pockets of habitat that are like basically like wilderness style setting in a non-wilderness area, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I can understand that. That's something that took me a little bit to learn and then have some experiences on my own. That was like, all right, like there's options out there. Cause I know, I remember seeing that bull that you killed in 2020. That was an absolute, that was 2020, wasn't it? Like an absolute pig. Oh, that's him right there. Holy cow.
It's not as big as that one.
Oh, geez. Yeah, that one's giant too.
Yeah, that one I killed in 2017. That was a pig.
Jeez. Yeah, that is incredible. Was that split fist there?
The G5s are split.
Yeah.
And the split on it is like 9 inches.
Oh, man. It's like, that's insane. Yeah, no one else can see that, but it's there's a couple big bulls, bucks, caribou bulls, moose, everything on your walls there. Yeah. Sheep. Man, that's an insane trophy room, but yeah. How old are you, Brandon?
I just turned 34.
Okay. Yeah. You got an impressive wall for being younger. That's awesome, man.
I got 3 left on the Super 10, so hopefully I can draw some tags.
Oh yeah, you said you're waiting on the Alaska draw, right?
Yeah, I'm putting for like everything up there, but I need a buffalo, a goat, and a mountain lion to fill out my Super 10, which would be cool.
Yeah, that's cool. So
yeah.
What's gonna be the hardest one? The buffalo?
I think to draw,
yeah,
for sure. It's like, I don't know, definitely seems like the hardest one to draw.
Yeah. My brother just killed one this year that he got.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he got a tag, and it was like, is pretty freaking awesome. Like just seeing like the pictures he was showing me of like just the size of like even like the back straps and everything that come off. It just like I don't even know how to fathom that.
For sure. That's a big critter.
So it took him and like some other guys he was with like an entire day just like trying to cut it up and
for sure.
Insane. But what about the mountain lion? What do you plan on doing for that hunt?
I got some buddies that one buddy that I guide with up in Alaska, he runs hound dogs in the winter, and just been trying to link up with him in between because he guides and stuff for him. So just trying to link up with him on off days and trying to like do that, and just get one. I don't know. It's not super high on my priority list because it's not, but
yeah,
I need it at some point,
Yeah. Did you grow up in Montana?
Yeah, I've grown up lived here my whole life, essentially.
Okay.
Yep.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
definitely Montana's definitely seemed like it's I can't really speak from experience, just from what everyone said, that it's definitely become more populated than it used to be.
Yeah, especially since COVID started. It's crazy.
Yeah, I know when I was out I guess it was 2021 was the first year I was out there. That was like one of the western states I hadn't been to is Montana. And since my brother moved there, and he worked for C Sharp's gun. He's a gunsmith and Big Timber there. And he was, and when he moved out there, I went out and I was met up with some people in Bozeman, and they were just talking about just even like just the prices of things and how much it's changed in just a couple year time frame is like insane.
Yeah, it's a little disheartening.
Yeah, I didn't mean to bring that up. And
oh, it's all right. Punch in the gut, bro.
Yeah, there's nothing you can do about it.
It changed everything. It's
Yeah.
crazy. The hunting pressure. Well, the hunting pressure in 2020 was way more intense than it was last year, but still, it was like, dude, holy shit. Especially when people weren't working, it was like, dude, what is going on?
Yeah.
Oof.
I was glad 2020 that I went to Alaska instead of going to the lower 48 out west, because like Alaska, I was like, man, this is sweet. And that's how I got the bug for Alaska. Like, and you and I have talked a little bit back and forth, but just this week, actually just today, I was just like talking about I'm gonna book 2 more hunts up there, one in 2023 and one in 2024. So I'm gonna do a blacktail and Kodiak blacktail there next year. And then I say that, and I haven't agreed to it 100% yet because it's during the whitetail rut, and that's like a super hard thing for me to be able to do. But I was like there's a lot. The rut happens every year, and I gotta weigh that. And then there's also but then I'm gonna go back to caribou again, take my dad and my brother, my cousins and uncles and stuff. Like, I think that'll be pretty cool.
That's pretty sweet. I was pumped to do the moose hunting this last year. Like, that was the coolest thing I've ever done. Like, and I killed a moose here when I was a kid, when I was like 13. But we were out in Western Alaska guiding them, and like, dude, those animals are so big. It is insane. I mean, it's like they're like 6.5 feet tall at the shoulder at least. And when you put them on the ground, it's like it is like stressful because of how big they are. Because like an elk is big, but like the Alaskan Yukon moose are like, they're easily double the size of our elk. And it's like the hindquarters, you couldn't like debone them out there, and so you had to and pack them back whole. And they're like 125, 135 pounds.
Oh man. Having that on your back to be able, like,
not fun.
No. And like, it's just like, so that was my first animal I wanted to hunt in Alaska. And me and my buddies were like, yeah, like, again, this is almost kind of like unrealistic expectations. I'm going to do a DIY, moose hunt in Alaska. So we start calling around. Not one transporter would fly us in. They're like,
for sure,
you're from Pennsylvania. You've never hunted Alaska before. They're like, how about you go do caribou? And I was like, okay. I'm like, but I want to hunt moose. And they're like, no, like, no, you're not hunting moose. I'm like, and I was trying to like give like, I can do it. And they're like, no.
Yeah,
I'm like, and I think that's actually pretty good that they do that. Like,
totally.
So like, that's still like super high on my list, but I'm like, I'm glad I did like caribou first. It's something that's easier to break down and learn how to like get it into the, how to freeze it and transport it back home and do all those things was much easier to do with a caribou than a moose would be.
For sure. Because the moose was like, I think on the ones that we broke down in Western Alaska, we had like 9 bags of meat, but they were all like 130 to like 80 pounds, and it's just like, dude, it's just like starts getting ridiculous when you're breaking them down. You're like pulling off chunks of brisket that are 100 pounds and you're like, what am I going to do with this? You know what I mean? Like, you're like, oh, because I broke down a ton of elk, like a ton of them. And it never was never like stressed. And then I get those moose down and you're just like, dude, what in the world? It's the biggest land mammal, and in North America.
Yeah.
It's insane.
Yeah, I remember when the first time I went to Anchorage and I saw a moose, I was like, for like the first time, I was like, holy cow, and then I've seen the moose some in the lower 48 in Colorado and Idaho and stuff, but like those Alaska ones are just freaking giant.
It's insane. Like that, nothing compares to that at all.
Are you like, so when you guide up there, are you by yourself as a guide? Do you have anybody else that's with you typically, or is it just you and the hunters?
Generally, you have like a packer. Like last year, I was working technically as a packer because you have to have like X amount of days. You have to have 60 days of Alaska hunting experience, and 30 of that has to be under a registered outfitter. So it's like I had basically the days, but I just didn't have like anything under an outfitter. So I had to work, as a packer. But it's still like I wasn't just a strong back. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was. And it definitely is helpful, especially when you're like with moose, even with sheep, like having somebody else there to like carry gear and like split shit up and, split up camp chores. It helps a lot. If you were doing it by yourself, it'd definitely be like a grind.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, I could imagine, man. Like that's so cool. And have you done, were they mostly like fly in drop ones or like float trips, or what kind of hunts have you been guiding up there?
They were all flying. The elk hunt we did was on a fognack, and that was via boat.
Okay. Oh, you guided elk on a fognack.
Yep.
I heard that's pretty wicked.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. Like we had an awesome time. It was like great weather. It was like 50 degrees and sunny. It was crazy. Yeah. Super nice. But like I know as soon as we were done, basically we were out there like bare minimum, we were out there, shot opening day and jetted out of there. But it was still like, I think after we were in there, it like just started pounding rain. And I know like Remy and the Meat Eater dudes have done that hunt and just got like blasted with rain and it looked terrible, and it's like, we did not have that experience, but I know that experience exists, for sure.
Yeah. That's crazy. It's just like Alaska's so unpredictable, and it's for the most part, when we were there for caribou, the weather was pretty good. I mean, you'd have your, daily rains that would come in and high winds and stuff, but it wasn't like for extended periods of time, luckily.
For sure. Yeah. And it's just like, I think just Alaska's synonymous with rain.
Mm-hmm.
It's just wet, like I've never been on that elk hunt was the driest hunt I've ever been on there. It's like, normally it just rains.
Yeah.
It'll either mist or like, there's like 100 different types of rain in Alaska,
Yeah. What was your favorite hunt in Alaska?
Oh man. I don't know. I think it's just those moose hunts, just cause it's just nuts knocking over an animal that's that big, and just like, and seeing them too. And it's like the first couple of bulls that we saw were like absolutely giants. And it was just like, holy shit.
Yeah.
It's like looking at something that's just like, I mean, cause I've hunted moose down here before and like, they're big, but they're not like huge, and you see those ones and they're like 65, 70 inches wide. And you're like, dude, what? Like, just like moving effortlessly. It's like, dude, it is insane.
Yeah.
Super cool.
Yeah. And it just like, I don't know, man, Alaska just like has a whole, just has a part of me. I just want to keep going back. Like, it's just so freaking cool. And like not having like the hunting pressure and all, because it is so difficult. And there's also the cost associated with those hunts that, kind of gives a barrier to entry a little bit when it comes to doing that. But it's just so incredible to have those, like, to be in those types of places.
Oh yeah. It'll get your talent. It'll get its talons into you for sure. I feel like once you go to Alaska, it's like, okay, when am I going next?
Mm-hmm.
For sure.
Yeah, that's the same thing we did. Like, and there were so many like different travel issues. Like we went up during the heat of COVID, like in 2020, and had to go through all that shit. And then like trying to come back, and then we got out of the field early, so I had to change the flights. And then basically I just had to buy all new flights because they wouldn't change it. So like it was like a lot extra expense that came down to it that I wasn't accounting for. But I just remember like when I booked that hunt, like the hunting consultant I used, Kyle, from Outdoors International, he was telling me, he's like, dude, I hunted Alaska a bunch. He's like, you need to just know that things are going to happen that aren't good, and you just got to let it roll off. And like, you just can't get stressed. You can't. And he is so right. Like, you got to have a good attitude about it no matter what, and just kind of roll with it.
Yeah. I feel like a lot of Alaska is just hurry up and wait.
Yeah.
You know? It's just like, oh, plane's coming. And then it's like, okay. And then you get ready and then you just wait. And then it's like, maybe the plane comes, maybe the plane doesn't come. And it's just like, well, I mean, I like waited on a strip for like 5 days, and it was just like, they're coming. And it was like, we're not coming today. And it was like the next day, it's like, we're not coming today. It's like, we might be there tomorrow, probably the next day. And it's like, well, I've been ready now for 4 days.
Yeah. I heard, like that's what, when we flew out, I remember there was a group of other hunters that were staying at the same hotel as we were before. Like, we flew out of the main village to go out, and we were staying there, and apparently they like bow tagged out on like day one, and it took them like 5 days to be able to get in because they were on top of the mountain, and where we were at was down low in the valley, and the way the weather was, they could fly in and get us, and we didn't kill till day 3 or 4, and they got us out before they got these guys out that had like, and it was like, they're like, yeah, I was just like waiting, trying to make that weather clear. And like, for us, it was fine. And they were only 5 miles away from us. That's just the way that it was. And, and it was crazy. Like, for me, I remember texting on the inReach, to our pilot and being like, hey, we got both our bulls. We're good staying here a little longer. Like, we're just enjoying it, but we're done. And then I get a text right back. It's like, weather's good. We're coming in now. I'm like, all right. And then they were there in a couple hours, and it's like, gotta hit those windows when you can.
Yeah, for sure. And I always tell people that too, is like, hey, so even on the guided hunts, you're like, hey, like, this looks like the window that we can get out of here is like, we need to like hunt hard until that day. And then we got to like go, it's not like we're going to roll through day 10 and just hopefully get picked up. Sometimes it might be like day 9 or day 8 where they're like, we have to get you now.
Yeah.
Because it's like storms coming in, and then we're not going to be able to get you.
Yeah. I know you had you'd commented on one of my Instagram posts when I was talking about like first aid emergencies and stuff in the backcountry. Have you seen anything like up there? I'm going to get to asking you about your story you were telling me about in grizzly country, but have you seen anything like when you're like out there like flying in where anything has happened that's been?
No, I mean, luckily I've never had any like, anything with a client ever.
Yeah, good.
I know they've had issues before of like clients like falling, especially up there, like sheep hunting and stuff, like clients slipping and like smacking their face. And like, I know the guide that I was with, Pete, he like had a moose client, and the guy like slipped and fell and like smoked his dome on a rock or something. It was like fine, but it's still like, dude, shit happens up there where it's just like,
yeah,
you gotta be like on it, like Alaska seems like innocuous sometimes, but it's like, you definitely gotta like be on your shit.
Yeah.
You don't want to like go in there willy nilly.
No, that's for sure. And yeah, so you were I want to hear about this story where you told me you cut yourself were you butchering an elk or something?
Yeah, I was butchering that bull from 2020, dude, that one. But so I had I killed this bull like 7.5 miles from the truck, like pretty deep in there. It killed it. I quartered it, and I was literally pulling the cape off like around the base of the antlers, and like my knife slipped. I plunged the Havilon into my hand like that. Like you can like see, I don't know if you can see the scar, but it's like, it's not.
Oh yeah. I do see that.
Like, yeah, it's like right
there.
But yeah, plunged that thing in there, and it went in like 1.5 2 inches almost. And it went in like the side, and it sucked because I'm like by myself in grizzly country, and it's just like, I just killed this elk, and it's just like, I can't I couldn't use my left hand because dude, I don't know what I hit, but it was just like in shock. And it was just like these two fingers, my index and my middle finger, were just like frozen. And it was like, I had all these quarters, like just laying on a log. And it was just like, well, I'm done. You just got to like call a spade. And you're like, I got to get out of here.
Yeah.
Cause it was bleeding. It wasn't like, I knew it wasn't like bad, but I still had that moment of like panic where you're like, fuck. I just sank a knife into my hand, and like I'm by myself, and you got to control your head at that point, because you're like, okay, I know this isn't like fatal, but it's like, this is not good.
Yeah, I got to take care of it, like sort of deal. And yeah, would be kind of nerve wracking being by yourself. Like it's a little bit different. Like if you have a buddy with you or something that kind of keeps you calm, and you kind of have that almost security blanket. But grizzly country, you're bleeding, you got dead elk down.
Yeah, I was definitely freaking out a little bit, and it was just like, it took me so long. Cause like I had just severed the spinal column, my hands were all gross, and I was like, I'm not a kind of person that ever goes to the hospital, and I was like, I gotta get this thing like washed out, and stitched. It wouldn't stop bleeding, and it was just like, I know there's like some funky shit going on in there, and it took me like, I think I left the kill site at like right about 2:00, and I got to the ER at 10. Whew. It took me that long to hike out of there, get in my car, and drive all the way to the ER.
Really?
Yeah.
Did you obviously you probably need stitches then at that point.
Yeah, it was only like 4 stitches, but it was still like, I mean, he had to sit there and like clean the whole wound because it was super deep. And so he's just sitting there like just pumping it full of stuff, and it was not. The worst part was just them sticking it with like the numbing stuff,
Yeah.
Like,
that's the worst part of anything. Like even if like even like you're getting like a cavity filled, like, and you gotta like no, I hate the needles that have the numbing shit in there. Like that just cringes me more than anything.
For sure. Yeah, it sucked. It was definitely an eye-opening experience though, because like normally, like my first aid kit had consisted of like electrical tape and duct tape wrapped around my trekking pole, and that was it. That was it. And it was like, it had worked fine until then, and it was like that time it was like, shit, I don't have nearly enough duct tape. I don't have nearly enough electrical tape. I ended up like putting a glove on and then just putting my release around my hand like this and just like strapping it down just to like try to put some pressure on it.
Mm-hmm.
I just shoved my hand underneath my bino bivvy and just like walked out of there like this, Yeah. But it was like, it was a fucking send getting out of there. I had to like shot in a hole, and I had to hike up like 1,600, 1,800 feet up over this plateau that was like almost 10,000, and it's just like,
couldn't have been like a worse scenario for that.
For sure. It was definitely not like ideal.
Did a bear end up ever finding your spot or anything, or was everything?
No, we went in early the next day. We got to the kill site like at dawn, but it was like nothing had messed with it. But it's still like we rolled in there with a shoddy, and we had 4 people, but it was still like there's pretty high bear densities in there, so it's definitely a little like rattling, like walking in there like archery season. You're like,
Yeah. And
I'm like gimped up. I got one hand.
Captain Hook over there.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, that's crazy. Have you had any encounters with bears like in some of your hunts?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, on the Alaska hunts, we've definitely got into bears. On the first sheep hunt, we like came out of some brush and like popped out of the brush and looked over, and there's a sow grizzly with 2 cubs at like 54 yards. And it was just kind of like, woof, whoa, this is real, and she like, you could kind of tell just from body language and stuff that like, she wasn't like interested in like messing with us,
Yeah.
Had bear and Kodiak like steal a fish off this lady's line. Like she's hooked up, and the bear like steals the silver salmon and like takes off with it still on the line.
Oh.
It's like up there, it's a different thing because their food source is so rich. Like they don't even care about people. You know what I mean? And it's like down here, it's like, I'd way rather run into a grizzly up there than down here, Not saying that ones up there won't try to kill you, but I think it's less likely,
Yeah. We didn't have any problems with bears up there. Like we saw quite, I mean, I don't know, probably 3 or 4 of them in those 3 or 4 days that we were there. But it, I always laugh, like the brush is like cracks me up because when we were coming, like, we see the bears and we're watching through the spot and scope, and then they go down, and I'm like, oh, I lost them. I'm like, they must have went over the ridge or that saddle, and I didn't see them. And then we spotted some caribou that bedded, and we started moving up through there and realized that brush that looked like ankle high is actually like 8 to 10 foot tall alders. I'm like, oh, like I had said to my buddy Michael, I was like, you can go first, man. Like you're good. Like you move through there. And we had tracks in camp like when we were sleeping, but that had come through like right through like by the tents and stuff. But I'll never forget that. I remember like looking down and I'm like, dude, is this like fresh bear shit? And Michael's like, no, that's a week old. I'm like, dude, that looks pretty freaking fresh. He's like, no. He's like trying to like calm me down. He's like, no, it's nothing. I'm like,
Yeah, for sure. Definitely a little unnerving. So you gotta be you just gotta know up there. It's like there's gonna be a grizzly wherever you're at.
Yeah.
More than likely.
Yeah, no, I didn't feel super worried. Like, I mean, we weren't dumb about it though. Like, even when we were like butchering the caribou, like we just always just kind of like one face one way, one face the other as we were doing things. Try to be smart about it and like always take your bear spray when you go get water or whatever, and just like pay attention to it. But I never felt like fearful of it. I could see like in some of those areas of Montana and Wyoming and stuff like that would be with some of that just thick country, that would be a little bit more nerve-wracking hunting in some of those places.
For sure. I definitely know, like, even spending like those 2 months in Alaska and then like coming back here and hunting in rifle season. I know there's a couple days like hunting around the park. It was like, dude, I just you're like thinking like, because in Alaska you're really not doing a whole lot of like stuff at night.
Yeah.
Not really at night. You're just kind of like, it's the animals aren't as much, day, morning and night kind of affair. It's more just like you could kill something any time of day.
Yeah.
But it's here, you got to hike in. Like, I mean, I've had spots where I've hiked in 2-3 hours in the dark, and it's like in grizzly country and you like, no. And it's like a lot of those trails are like along creeks. So it's like, those are the kind of areas where it's like that bear's not going to hear you. It's not going to smell you until you're like on it, you know? So that's a little unnerving because you're just like, oh, and just, it seems like, bear encounters up there are much more frequent and they're far less violent. But then when you hear about the bear encounters down here, it's like, it's like people definitely get mauled down here a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. It seems like it's more and more every year in like in Montana and everything. Like I remember one situation, first time I went to Alaska, I wasn't hunting. I was up there in Anchorage and I was actually staying in the backyard. Me and my brother were sleeping in my teepee in the backyard. Heather Kelly from Heather's Choice, she had like this Heather's Choice retreat up there, and we went up there and I got up in the middle of the night, which it was during the summer solstice, so it was like daylight all the time. It was like 3 o'clock in the morning, and I heard like the dogs barking, and I woke up and I'm like, I gotta shit. And there was an outhouse like in the woods there, and I went and I remember going in there, and there's like no door on the front of it, which was kind of weird. And I remember like sitting there being like, picturing Jurassic Park where like the T-Rex comes and rips them out of the, I'm just like laughing, I get up and I go back to bed and the neighbor came over a little bit later and it's like, there's a grizzly like outside your guys' tent. And that's what the dog was barking at. And he went into the woods. He said he looked out the window and saw me get out of my tent and then go like towards the woods and go. And I'm like, oh, that was just like, just gave you that like gut feeling like that's just not good.
For sure. Yeah, there's grizzlies everywhere up there. There's a couple islands in Southeast that don't have them, but for the most part, like there's bears everywhere up there,
Yeah. Oh, that's funny, man. What do you got going on this year? Like, you got anything fun planned, or what's your schedule look like?
I don't have any personal hunts really like planned yet. Just guiding, doing some black bear hunts here in Montana. And then I'm going up to Katmai to guide a brown bear hunt in May, and then more black bear hunting here, and then August and September up in Alaska again, which would be fun.
Yeah, that's cool. Do you like spring bear hunting? Oh, it sounds like you do for how much guiding you're doing of it.
I love spring bear.
Yeah,
it's just a nice way to get out, and it's like it's a fun hunt, and for us here locally at least, like it's a fun mountain hunt. A lot of guys do the spring bear thing and they like walk logging roads, and you see in BC, they just drive around and like shoot them out of the barrow pit, basically, but we get to hunt them in the mountains here. So it's like an excuse to hunt some stuff like in some of the sheep and goat country here that you'd never get a chance to hunt, that you can hunt on an over-the-counter tag every year, which is cool.
No, that's sick. I'm excited. This is my first year bear hunting. We have a bunch of black bears in PA, but it's just not the same. So I'm excited to go out to spring bear hunt, and I'm gonna spend 10 days out there this year. So I'm awesome. I'm freaking pumped about it. Like, it's just like, it's one of those things too, like just getting to like start off your year and like get to do that like after winter and all that stuff's over, get out, get in the mountains. And I have no expectations or really know anything about it other than I just want to try it. That's kind of it.
Yeah, it's like once you go bear hunting, it's like spring turkey seems a little lame.
Yeah, I know. That's it. I know. That's like so. Like it'll be right in the middle of our turkey season, and I like turkey hunting. Don't get me wrong, I love it. And but I was like, I'd rather go to Montana and try to hunt bears.
For sure. I mean, you can always pick up a turkey tag here too. Yeah, I think the season's open till like May 11th, and you can get like it's something absurd. It's like 13 turkey tags.
Are you serious? 13?
Oh yeah, it's insane. You can like kill, and don't quote me on this, but you can kill like one in every administrative region, which there's 7, and then there's like, extra tags here. So you could end up with like 13 in a year.
Holy cow.
Insane. It's just like,
I would like to hunt turkeys. I've only ever hunted Easterns, and I've only ever hunted in Pennsylvania and Ohio. So like I've never hunted out. My brother said it's a lot different. Like he lived in Colorado before Montana, and he's just like, he killed one in Colorado that was just like, he said they were super dumb. Like he basically like snuck up on it and just like over a rock and shot it. And it was like really close to being the state record, like freaking giant. And he's like, but he's like, it was just shit luck that happened that way. But he's like, it's different. He's like, they're everywhere.
For sure. Yeah. And I mean, the reason why I don't do it here, because it seems like they're just like yard birds. They're just like glorified livestock here. Because I know for a fact that like the birds out east are way smarter. Yeah. Because I've had a lot of clients be like, dude, this is insane. You're like driving by birds and they're just like sitting there looking at you. And it's like, I was just had a heart. It just wasn't palatable for me. I'm just like, dude, it's like literally like my dad would go out and feed pigs in the morning and the fucking turkeys would just like hear that grain bin drop and they just like run. You literally like, you could almost sit on the road and like watch. You're like, okay, Dad, feed the hogs. And then the turkeys would come up from roost and just start like running up the road, doing their dance. And you're just like, dude, this is not like, I mean, like neighborhoods here, it's like you go on like the outskirts of town and like find where the turkeys are. And like, you're hunting them in people's yards, like, it's not, and I'm sure there's some like stuff where you could like get away from that. But a lot of it's like, you're hunting town turkeys,
Yeah, that's what my buddy. I was just when I was at the show there, I was working the Maven booth with a guy from Wyoming, and he's talking about that. He's like, "Oh yeah, our turkey hunting is just like get a bunch of buddies together. It's basically like having camp and drinking beer, and then you just go ride around till you see turkeys, and then you go and you shoot them, and that's kind of what it is."
So it's like, yeah, you can see why out here it's like, yeah, I'd rather go spring bear out here than spring turkey, but it is what it is.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm just pumped to try to hunt bears. Like it's just, I think it'd be cool the whole being able to spot them and everything. Like in Pennsylvania, like there's some freaking giant bears. Like don't get me wrong, and there's a lot of them, but like it's so thick. Like there's no glassing that goes on with it, and it's just, it's more so if you're not getting a bunch of people and driving them. It's kind of piss ass luck at that point.
Yeah, it's like you could go sit in somebody's cornfield and like in the fall and be like, we've been out here every night, and it's like, but other than that, you're like, dude.
Yeah, in the Appalachian Mountains, like where I'm at, it's just like when there's no like fields or anything, it's just like they're like in these like thick laurel patches and all this stuff, and like you can like, I know people have shot them with the bows and stuff, like hunting like acorns and stuff that they come out to, but I don't know, I've never had any luck with bears, so I'm excited to again like try to go out there and see what happens. I'm gonna go in the middle of May. I don't know if what you think about timing of that, but yeah.
That's great. I mean, every aspect of the season has like advantages and disadvantages. Like early in the season, they're kind of concentrated because there's only so much green up, Middle of May seems like the best equilibrium, whereas like there's a lot of country that's melted off. They have some room to roam, but they're still not like super widespread. And then you get into the later part of the season, and it's like, dude, those bears can be from the valley floor to the top of the peak, and so it does get tougher. I feel like later in the season because they literally can be anywhere.
Yeah. If you had to like pick a week for me to go out there, what would you say?
It's tough. I really like the first week of May and the second week of May, or like I don't know. I think those are like the best. I think you still get like, there's still quite a bit of habitat that's locked up in like snow, but there's not, and there's enough to hunt without there being too much to hunt, if that makes sense.
Yep. Yeah. Like you find those places, I'm assuming, that are like where you're getting some of that green up where the snow is melting, and you know that there's probably gonna be bears in that area versus if it's all melted off and everything's green and up, they could be spread out.
Yep. Yeah, because by the time summer comes around, those bears are like valley floor to the peak.
Yeah. When I was out in Montana last year, it was the end of June. I think I feel like bear season was still open at that time. My brother was saying sometime like third week of June, and we were fishing this one river, and we were in grizzly country too. But like we looked, and there was a bear. At first, I thought it was a grizzly. It was just a color phased black bear.
Yeah.
But but it was just, they were down by the roads at this point, and like just kind of feeding through some different areas. It was kind of like an old burn type spot.
For sure. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And like, our season goes to like June 15th. So like, if you like live here, it's kind of nice because like in June, it's light till almost 10 o'clock. So you could be like a 9 to 5 kind of guy and like go out after work and like still have a good chance of whacking a bear after work,
Yeah. No, that's cool.
Like, when you're hunting it and like hunting hard, it's like, dude, those June weeks are so rough because it's light at like 4:30 and it's dark at like after 10.
Really?
So, I mean, that's just like, dude, that is an obscenely long day.
Yeah, that is. Like, so what does it look like if like someone were to like say book a bear hunt with you? What type of hunting do you typically do?
I mean, our bear hunts kind of look like there's no pressure to wake up in the morning. Like I've killed bears at dawn, but most of the time you're killing bears like from 1 o'clock till dark. So it's generally like a pretty cush morning. You kind of like hang out, eat breakfast around like 9 or 10 o'clock, like roll out. And like most of the day, like, you spend some time like hiking into a glassing point or a vantage point, which can vary in distance and elevation. But most of the day you're spent sitting on your ass, like glassing. You want to like basically find those vantage points where you can look at as much country as possible, where you still have like a chance of killing something in. And you want to just plant yourself there and have the patience to sit there until like, roughly dark. Or I have like cutoff times a lot of times where I'm sitting here and realistically, like I could hunt, like if I spotted something at 6 o'clock, I have a chance of killing it. But after that, there's not enough time in the day.
I couldn't even get to it.
Exactly. So it's like, oh, that's a tomorrow bear. But then like a lot of times, especially later in the season, early in the season, if you see a bear, you can probably go back and kill it the next day, like the first couple of weeks. After that, it's like you had better kill that bear when you see it because you'll never see that bear again.
Yeah, that makes sense.
For sure.
Cool.
It's like a whitetail cruise, like pre-rut. It's like you see it once and like that, you would better kill that thing.
Yeah, because they're just going to keep moving at that point.
For sure.
It makes sense. Well, cool, man. I appreciate you coming on and chatting with me here and talking. Like
Absolutely.
I said, it's been a long time coming. I've had you. I have a list of like people I want to talk to, and I've had you on the list for a while. And I just the other day I was like, I looked at my messages because I felt like I'd reached out to you before and realized I hadn't. So I was like, I'm gonna see if you wanted to come on and talk. So I appreciate it.
Yeah, dude, totally, absolutely.
So I know like you book hunts, and do you take like people that would be open to coming out and hunting? Like, would you take new clients on? Do you have like?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, for sure.
So how can people find you and like some of that stuff?
Best way to reach me is probably just through Instagram, durango.boone on Instagram. It's definitely the best way to like just look at kind of the hunts I offer and see my program and reach out.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And yeah, your Instagram's always full of some good stuff and some good photos. I know you're pretty good friends with Zach Boughton there, and Zach's been on the podcast before, and I've taken his course, The Hunting Photographer, and got to know him pretty well through that and everything. And you have some good stuff on there. It said your description's booking epic hunts in Alaska, Montana, and beyond. So if that's what you're looking to do, gotta get a hold of you. Cool. Well, thanks again, Brandon. I really do appreciate you coming on and talking.
Absolutely.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of East Meets West Hunt with your host, Beau Martonik. For more great content and to stay up to date, visit eastmeetswesthunt.com, Facebook at East Meets West Outdoors, and Instagram at East Meets West Hunt. If you enjoyed today's episode, please review and subscribe, and we'll catch you next time.